You're listening to Tripod, the Tricycle Creative podcast, produced for anyone interested in being a better digital and content marketer. Host Ross Erosion is a marketing coach, content creator, and entrepreneur who brings you helpful tips, social media updates, inspiring interviews, and his own unique perspective on how to tell your story and grow your business. So sit back, relax, and let's get pedaling.
Thanks for checking out this live stream of Rewind, a series where we break down the biggest marketing stories every single month. Now, this video was our first live stream Rewind. And like most live productions, there were some little snafus. For example, when I forgot to turn on my mic for the first couple minutes of the show. Stupid, idiot. So let's pretend like that never happened. And we're gonna join the video to when my microphone is turned on and the show is, well, an actual show. Enjoy. Okay, all right. This is the great part of live streaming. My audio wasn't live for that whole beginning part. What a dream. I'm such a professional. Such a dork. Thank you to my wife listening. Yeah.
You know what, though? I will say my first webinar that I did when I launched Social HQ.
Yeah.
Did the whole webinar, promoted it, had, tons of people who were ready to show up. I had my waiting room on, and I gave the entire webinar to no one. And people just sat in the waiting room waiting to get in.
Welcome to live streaming. Okay. I was just throwing shade at terrible Zoom meetings, and here I am talking with no audio. So let's just jump right into today's sponsor, Gardenia. If you're not familiar with who they are, what they do, we just did a podcast with the founder and CEO, Roman Gonzalez. You can get that at tripodpodcast.com. Super excited about that. But they have extended an offer to our listeners, and that offer is 15% off your entire order when you use promo code TRIPOD at checkout. And that is growgardenia.com. And what they do is you sign up for a season, if you will. It's a subscription service. You sign up for a season of plants. They send you the plants, and they're herbs. They're all herbs you can grow. All the instructions. It's totally dummy proof because I'm a complete dummy when it comes to plants. I don't have a green thumb. I have like a black thumb. Like I'm terrible at like growing things. They give you all the instructions, everything, exactly how to do it. And they have this really great, what they call infinite lives program. So if your plant dies or you kill it, like maybe I did by accident, they send you a new one, which is fantastic. So Gardenia, check it out for all of our listeners. Growgardenia.com. Use promo code TRIPOD at checkout. And if you don't believe me, this is like one of those, do you remember Hair Club for Men? Was it Hair Club for Men? Where it's like, I'm not only a president, I'm also a client. This is true. I'm a client. This is my beautiful wife with our first shipment of Gardenia plants. And they send you the soil too. Like you get the soil, the plant, everything. Super cool. So please, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, check them out. Growgardenia.com. Use tripod at checkout to save 15% off. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into our first of 3 marketing stories that you need to know from July 2020. I haven't worked out the sound effects thing yet. And it involves our...
I am sound effects, Ross.
You're right. Never mind. Yes. Never mind, people. We got it. We got it covered. We got it totally covered. Our first story is the Facebook ad boycott. So this happened in July. Companies pulling their ads from Facebook. In July, they also had a meeting, I guess a summit. They probably called it like a summit, something fancy like that.
Probably.
With different nonprofit organizations. And that summit, I think I can safely say, was a complete non-starter. Like everyone that came out of the summit, probably that wasn't Facebook, was like, that was a total waste. Nothing happened. And I think if you're trying to understand or wonder what the Facebook ad boycott was about, Rashad Robinson, president of Color of Change, one of the organizations involved in that summit, it's a pledge in holding Facebook accountable for enabling hateful, denigrating, and discriminatory content against Black people. What's your take, Hillary? What was your first, was this a shocker that companies were pulling from Facebook in light of Black Lives Matter and all the other things going on?
So yes and no. I historically, taking it out of just the context of Black Lives Matter and the movement that really resurged in June, end of May with the death of George Floyd, I have seen this a couple times before with Facebook where something happens, companies threaten to pull or do pull ad budgets and then, say, if you're not taking a stand or if you're not taking a position that's strong enough to what we agree with and where our beliefs are, we are not going to spend money with you. However, I will say that this just so happened to correlate with a lot of industries being affected by COVID-19.
Oh,
and so conveniently, there is a little bit of a parallel about, there's the side which is entirely focused on the human rights issue and the stance issue. And then there's the side which is the business issue. So from where I stand, I see a couple of companies that took it as an opportunity to make a position when they were already going to cut their budgets.
That's interesting.
Because a lot of companies have their fiscal year ending in June and then going into July, especially in the CPG category, and then you've got October. So I don't know. I wasn't sitting there like, yeah, everybody. I was kind of like, let's dive a little deeper. Let's see what you're really talking about here. And also, I think that with these kinds of movements or these kind of boycotts, money talks. So let's see where we're at in the next 3 to 6 months and which of these companies, because a lot of them only said we're going to, cut it off for a month, 2 months, 3 months. They didn't say we're going to cut it off forever. So I'm skeptical, but.
You're coming in skeptic. You're coming in hard skeptic. But I would also say you're coming in very much realist. I didn't even kind of think about it that way. But I think now hearing that, there's a lot of potential truth there. The idea that they were going to have to potentially pull money anyways. And this is not necessarily to take away from, I think, the ethical decision, right? But I think Absolutely. When we're talking about these ethical decisions in business, the water gets a little more muddy. Right? Mm-hmm. That it's, to your point, they were going to have to make cuts anyways. And if you're going to do that, there is a tremendous groundswell right now, I would say, among brands when it comes to Black Lives Matter and racial injustice. And I hate to say that. What? Go ahead.
Who does put their money where their mouth is, though, and I will give them props. I
think I know where you're going to go, but go ahead.
Ben and Jerry's,
dude.
baby.
Ben and Jerry's.
Oh.
Ben and Jerry's. You think they'd be some sweet, innocuous little ice cream company?
Holy smoke!
Holy hell! Ben and Jerry's gives you 2 scoops of honesty, and then they top it off with some hot fudge of right in your face. Right in your face. This is the truth. Their statement is a gold standard. And I talk about this in one of our podcasts on Tripod Podcast. Mm-hmm. It was like a gold standard of talking the talk, walking the walk, and really having this ethical moral compass as part of your company DNA. It was crazy.
You can tell.
Yeah.
It's so transparent when it is a part of, I love company DNA because it's so apparent when that's the case and when you can see a company really live and breathe. I think a lot of companies like to say, we have great values. But you dig in a little bit deeper and it's like you have a lot of people that have incredible values.
Mm-hmm.
You got to look up at the top though. Okay, what's coming down through the
Yeah.
organization? And is it only when things are hot and heavy in the press and it's opportunistic? I mean, I just saw a statistic. I think it was like over 50% of consumers think that a stance from a company
Yeah.
is a PR move and it's just a tactic.
Hmm.
So even though, 70 to 80% think it's so important for brands to have a stance when it comes to social injustice, when it comes to issues that are very real in the world. And so there's a huge disconnect between the trust that people have for organizations and the call for transparency and for organizations to lead in the same light that Ben and Jerry's do. Now, that being said, I still don't understand why people are split on Black Lives Matter. I think we're getting down to like nitty gritty details.
Sure.
At the end of the day, not a political issue, definitely a human issue.
Yep.
But man, they got smoked.
And here's the thing. I will say this, devil's advocate, just a little devil's advocate to your, this is a quasi business move. Looking at this list of companies that have pulled ads, I mean, if you're asking to put your money where your mouth is, Unilever pulling $42.1 million, essentially $42.4 million. They spent that in 2019. So they're saying we're going to pull that. Verizon, about 31.4 million. I mean, the tens of, can you imagine being a business that is in a position to lose people who bring in literally tens of millions of dollars? That's a great place to be in for Facebook. But I will say,
I know, right?
These companies, I mean, even being the realist, if you will, about it, pulling even a fraction of 42, let's say they spend 10 million a quarter, right? Pulling 10 million for the next 3 months, like that is significant. That's nothing to kind of throw out. That's meaningful.
Yeah.
Those are meaningful numbers.
They are. It's a lot of money that they're dealing with.
A ton of money. Yeah, I would never say I'd wish to be Facebook, but listen, I will love years from now to be in a position to be like, oh, but can you overnight also losing like 4, 5, 6? Because it was an avalanche. It literally in the course of like 4 or 5 days, it was like boom, boom, boom. Verizon, Unilever, Ben and Jerry's, I think, North Face, Patagonia, REI, Dick's, blah, 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 I don't know, like boom, 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 boom. Like it hit fast.
But they do it. You know why? And I don't know if the truth of this, but this is where I start to get, okay, this is where my fishy radar goes off. And I'm like,
I love
because they see the first one in the press and they see the first one getting praise. And then they're like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. But here's the thing.
I don't know.
You don't want to get them there because of shame, but shame is a tactic for sure.
Yeah.
And if this does get them there and gets them thinking differently or gets them to be engaging Facebook, so Facebook thinks differently, because here's the thing, what is it? Money talks, bullshit walks. Like if in the course of a week, Facebook loses $100 million, plus over this, you got to think that they're going to be, okay, it's fine if they were against us just by saying things, but now they're pulling money. Now it's a real crisis, for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they're a multi-billion-dollar company, but not for nothing. A lot of that money, don't be fooled, comes from ads. That none of their platforms they're not paid platforms per se. You don't pay a membership thing. So it's all ad-based. So that's a big, big hit. So this was
the bigger deals absolutely are going to hurt for them and continue to hurt.
This, our first story, we have 2 more to go, but before we do that, I actually want to I have another co-host here. I'm going to switch it on over here to give you a look. This is the Ellie Cam, my puppy, who is currently licking her paws, and you're not, no, No. She's not supposed to be licking her paw. What the heck? Ellie! See, this is where she's a bad co-host. See, I can't stop this. But if you like Ellie as a co-host, you can hit that like button on YouTube and I'll give her a treat. Not for licking those paws, because that is bad. I may put her in a cone and then you'll see what's going on here. But this is just an Ellie cam. A quick little aside as we move into our next topic, our second topic, and that is Twitter. Twitter got hacked in July. Twitter got hacked. So what happened was tweets went out from verified accounts that asked followers to donate Bitcoins. I mean, listen, let me just say this. I don't know nearly enough about Bitcoins or cryptocurrency. I've read many a Wired article, but my brain breaks halfway through them. I just gotta think if there's Bitcoin donations involved, your radar should already go up. I just gotta say that, right? Mm-hmm. And the tweets, some of the people who these hack tweets went out: Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Kanye West, Warren Buffett. Let me just say, if this were an SAT question and you were given this list, what one person doesn't really belong in that list? Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Bezos, Kanye West, Warren Buffett.
Oh, man. I mean, my first gut actually was Elon Musk, but now I'm going to have to say Kanye West. Reason is because Elon Musk would absolutely tweet something like that.
Okay, you're right. In context, you're right. He would. His Twitter account is notoriously ridiculous, right? So you're right.
I'm putting them in the same bucket right now. July 2020, Elon Musk and Kanye West.
Elon Musk and Kanye West, their wagons are hitched together. I could see that, makes a little sense. But we're not talking about chump change here either. I mean, so one of them received somewhere in the amount of $59,000 worth of Bitcoin. And again, I don't know much about Bitcoin, but that's pretty significant. That seems pretty significant.
It is pretty significant, especially if it was $59,000 at the time.
Yeah. So how many Bitcoins did you donate? That's really my question.
Oh, I thought about it long and hard, and I have to come up with an absolute 0.
You weren't fooled? This is like a bad... Twitter's been in the news for, I don't know, man, a lot recently. Battling Trump. And I will say disinformation. Let me just put it out there. Battling disinformation. Let me just say that more broadly, if you will. But this was, I think, a scary thing. And I don't know if there's any extra implication here, but coming from verified accounts. So real quick, for people who don't know, talk about what a verified account is.
Yeah, a verified account essentially says this is a real person. This is a real, tweet that's coming from them. It's a very real account. So it's helpful for companies, especially, or big names, celebrities, influencers, to be able to say, this is coming from somebody legit, essentially is what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's a big concern, is that it's the legitimacy of these people, that this is who they say they are. That's a real thing about the verification process. And that, this hack, and let's also say verified accounts, just generally speaking, they are people of
influence.
Thank you. That's a good word to use. Influence. They have audiences. They are, whether those audiences, again, be entertainment, news, politics, what have you, the verification thing on Twitter, the blue check, is something that many people have, wanted and seek out. So this idea of this Twitter hack coming from verified accounts, that's a bad thing. It's not a great look for Twitter. I mean, not that any hack really is. I'm yet to find a hack that was truly, really great news. So, what's the takeaway on the Twitter hack? For me, I think it's letting you know that right now, as you're watching this, you should go turn on two-factor authentication for your Twitter account. And you can do that. It's easiest done on the web versus on your mobile device. Go to the web, go to your account, you go to the security, and in there it's something called two-factor authentication. And what that is, I'm sure you're familiar with it, but when anyone logs in, you have to first enter a 6-digit number that Twitter will send to an authorized phone. So that way, if you're like, hey, what the hell? I didn't just log into Twitter, you know something's going on. You, I think, had another takeaway, though, from this.
Yeah, I think it shows the power of influence, honestly. When you ask people to do something, it just shows you the power that social media has to be able to connect with people, ask something of them, and have them do it. Which, especially as we've been talking through with, I mean, we haven't even gotten to this point yet, but, is TikTok going to go away with the congressional hearings that happened yesterday? What happened with the whole idea of companies, essentially not being able to directly target? Is there going to be an issue with data security and how we're able to connect with our customer? This is the other side of it, which is the organic side. This was all organic. There was no pay. There was no targeting. It was strictly going out to audience members of these influential people. And it worked to be able to say, here, put your money here. I mean, I saw it and I was like, I would never listen to Kanye West, but there are people out there who are highly influenced by these folks. So for me, my takeaway of it was, man, the power of organic social media, the power that you can have. And these, gentlemen especially have built insane careers, but it's even brands that have this kind of power. So for me, I was kind of like, oh, this is an entertaining little social experiment that we've got going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, they had large audiences, so I guess, they have a good start as far as a base number of people who potentially would click through and donate and that kind of thing. And it's really, it gets very specific too, because you got to click through, and then it's also, I don't think there's a large aspect of the population that, again, is working with Bitcoins. So, I mean, I think just even right out of the gate, you're kind of limiting the true money you could get. But obviously, when you're a hacker, the most important thing is it not being able to be traced, which is why you go the Bitcoin route over I'm going to create a PayPal account. Well, that one might be a little bit easier to figure out and, look at where the funds are going and that kind of thing. So yes, if you are on Twitter, either as a business or an individual, please take the time right now, go and turn on two-factor authentication. Again, it is easiest done, and I think you may have to do it on web. I think when you go on your phone to try and do it, it says you have to do this on, in a browser or something like that. So definitely recommend you do that. So listen, Hillary and I talked about this too. There's no one thing, or there's no multiple thing really, that's 100% foolproof, right? That's there's nothing you can do that's going to be 100% foolproof, but this at least is a step in the right direction, setting two-factor authentication for Twitter. And I would even say by extension, your other accounts too. Every month, Facebook's having a hack story, it happens.
Yeah, I think that's the world of the internet. And the best thing that you can do is have different passwords for your different pages. Of course, turn on your two-factor authentication. And then also it comes down to don't be, be careful with your brand accounts. So don't share your information. Don't share your passwords to other users, really control the environment, change your passwords often. That's the best thing that you can do. But after seeing and after working with a lot of brands who have had hacks before, it's very tricky. So just make sure that you have all of the issues in the back end to be able to say, okay, we're hacked. Here's what we do. Here's what we do. Here's what we do. Here's what we do.
Isn't that where the
And if it ever
strength?
happens,
Isn't that where the strength of a social media management tool comes into play? Right,
absolutely.
where if you have multiple people accessing an account, that's really the time when you should probably be moving for no other reason, even like at the base minimum reason for security, because they have to create an account for that platform. They have access, but then you can go in, and if they, get gruntled or disgruntled, pro-gruntled, if they have any nature of gruntlage, you can remove them. Mm-hmm. You can, limit permissions to certain things. And many of these platforms have their own, like Facebook Business Manager, for example, allows you to do this for Facebook. I don't think Twitter by itself has like a brand management platform. Do you I know they have TweetDeck, which I guess maybe, but Twitter hasn't really launched its own like brand multi-platform management type of thing. But things like, Hootsuite. I mean, we could sit here all day and probably list them off. I use one called Content Studio. There's a million of them. If you are a business that has multiple people in your social accounts, I would recommend at least looking at and considering social media management platforms from a security standpoint. Because if you're just like, oh, here's the email and here's the password, chances are you're going to forget all the people you've given that to. Right? Or that person will give it to someone else and you didn't even know that they gave it to someone else. It just becomes this like chain of, you don't know who has the password. You don't know what's happening with it, who has it. And that opens yourself up to not even like some cases, not even a malicious hack, sometimes an unintentional hack. Someone tweeting out personal things from a brand account. We see that also all the time.
That is a nightmare in our industry. That is, every social media manager that I know has had that nightmare before. Not that they've done it, but that they have woken up and thought that, oh no, when I was out at the bar last night, did I accidentally tweet from Nike or did I tweet from my own personal account?
Right. And the takeaways there are either don't have those accounts connected to your phone, like as a former brand, as a former person who had access to brand socials, don't have that connected to your phone. Or if you really want to be safe, just don't do that behavior at all. Those are kind of
don't go to the bar.
Your two routes. Your two routes,
Yeah.
So
no, everybody that I've worked with has been really professional, so I'm very glad about that.
That's not true. You work with me.
That can always get.
That's
true. Touche.
Everyone but me has been really professional. So now we get to our third and final story, marketing story from July that you need to know, and it blends nicely with what we talked about at the beginning when my mic was not working. What a dream. And also
that I only heard.
It was great though. Can you tell people how just like intellectual and poignant, but also entertaining that really introduction piece was? I mean, you would agree 100%.
So animated.
Thank you.
100%.
Thank you. Wasn't really the adjective I was going for, but it is accurate. So I'll give you points for that. Our third story here is TikTok. It's time up for TikTok. In July, there's been a lot of scuttlebutt about TikTok. And now first, you may not be aware of this, but there's been a lot of discussion about Chinese hardware, particularly in the 5G space. So Huawei, which is a brutal butchering of their company name, they produce a lot of 5G technology, but they have connections to the Chinese government. Like a lot of Chinese corporations do, there's links to the Chinese government, and that has made a lot of countries very nervous about that, because are there shortcuts, backdoors, things that are in this hardware that could be damaging to, countries that use it. So we were first against the hardware. Now it seems it's moving into software also, with TikTok being the most recent threat, right? And so should Americans use TikTok? This is a question. And that was posed to our very own Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who is still attempting to buy Greenland. And he said, only if you want your private information in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. That's the only reason you'd want to use TikTok. That's it. That's the big thing. You got some strong takes on this. And when we first met, we talked a little TikTok. And I will also say my first and only TikTok was made the biggest of deals when because I texted you. I was like, I made a TikTok and it was the worst thing ever, but I was so proud of it, you know? And so we've talked extensively about TikTok. Fire at me your take on this.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, I think I need to preface this with the fact that I am not a data security expert. I only know as much of the information that I can find through articles, through reading the privacy policy that TikTok has in place, through diving in at, a very surface level to their organization and the fact that they do have a full running operation in the United States for TikTok. So I did some digging and I was looking at it because essentially, you do have the issue of data security. You do have the question marks around how much of it is being shared with, a government that does not always see eye to eye with America. So that being said, and that foundation coming into it, you give your data to every social media channel and every internet platform all the time. It's like every piece of information that you're going to be giving TikTok, you have given to Google and more. You have given to Facebook and more. The only one that I would say is actually pretty good is Twitter. Twitter is terrible for targeting. Yeah. And I mean, that's for advertisers, that sucks. But for users, that's a great thing because it means that they don't have as much dirt on you. But realistically, especially when Cambridge Analytica came out and it shed a light on what all marketers knew that was being used from a data standpoint, but users had no idea. They're like, oh my gosh, you can tell that I live in this zip code and that I like dogs.
The first time I walk someone through like Facebook targeting, they're usually pretty blown away. I mean,
but I get it. It's scary. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, somebody can look me up and say, Hillary, I know what you did last summer. Mm-hmm. And that's not really the case. It's not how it works. It's
anonymized, metadata. But at some level it's not, if that makes sense. Like at some level there's the connection. I got to think, right? Again, not being a data security expert, right? I mean, at some level for it to be anonymized, it means they have to have data to maybe scrub, would be my thought, right?
So like I said, I'm not a data security expert. I can't tell you exactly what they can and can't do behind the scenes. I just know from a marketing standpoint and from the general population of digital marketers and the information that we have access to, we, for example, can't get down to just like one population person and target that one person unless it's reversed, unless we're saying, okay, I know Ross Hirosian, I know his address, I'm going to target him.
I know
so
he likes
can't do it the other way around and like espionage.
I know he likes Star Wars. Yeah. He has a dog named Ellie. He, here's his zip code. I got
guarded.
Yeah.
So I got all that stuff, and you've got email lists that have been used for a long time, and that opens up a whole can of worms. There's a lot in the data sphere that's already existed. Where TikTok, for me, and from a user standpoint, I'm not looking at that saying, yeah, that's a huge problem for users outside of what we've already been dealing with. So I don't think it's necessarily a question about TikTok and the data as much as it is all internet and data usage.
I like
and
that.
Then you get and then you get back into the idea of, okay, so how much information are you willing to hand over to these giants, to these tech giants, to these tech companies. I mean, especially with the congressional hearing yesterday, there was a lot of chatter around where's the line about how much data you're using and how much the population has the right to say, no, you can't use my data. I don't allow it. But then also how much of your data is still being used, because you do have to have a password. You do have to have an email associated with it. There's a lot. It's like a currency to buy into the ability to use these platforms. And then the flip side of it is, Ross, a, man,
Sure am.
doing his thing,
Oh.
is not going to be getting ads for, high school, back to school outfits.
That better not be.
Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So there's a lot with targeting where I'm not going to be, I don't have children. I'm not going to be getting play sets.
Mm-hmm.
But the second you start getting the data removal and people not being able to opt in or opt out, you lose the personalization, which I think that a lot of people right now don't see the correlation of how that can get really bothersome for them.
So there's a lot to unpack, and you brought up a lot of really great points. And here's my first thing.
Thank you for following me on that journey.
No, it was good. And here are the things that I liked. First, the concept that this should bring up a broader discussion about data security as a whole. Because here's the hypocrisy in this. To your point, Facebook, Amazon, I mean, not so much really Apple, to our knowledge. It doesn't seem as well known or documented or whatever, right? I mean,
they got your email, man. Don't be too excited.
Yeah, but they are taking data, personal data, that admittedly some that you give, some that they, through AI and through behavior, they ascertain about you. And they are storing that kind of data and information. And as we've seen with Cambridge Analytica, also, I mean, every 2 months, Facebook has a giant privacy breach. Whether you know it or not, you should. They have a major privacy breach, it seems like every month or two, where they accidentally give a third party data that a third party is not supposed to have on their users, right? And so I think first, this conversation about like the hypocrisy about how, well, it's okay for our American like social media companies to completely stomp all over your data privacy, but we don't want a foreign entity get it, which I do agree. But it's like, don't be completely blind to the fact that like errors, egregious abuse is happening right here with our own companies. That is a real thing. So that's the first thing. Second thing, yes, the conflict of, as a user, I want my, whatever personal data I suppose to have some level of privacy and security. But if you remove that completely, you're going to lose I do call it a benefit of targeted ads. People may, kind of like, poo-poo over getting targeted ads. And listen, you can take it to the level that is damn creepy. I'll give you that. 100% agree that it can be real creepy with retargeting. But, this is a conversation I have with Chris a lot, where it's like, would you rather have targeted ads that are relevant to you? Or would you rather not have that? Like, to your example, like, I don't have kids. I don't give a crap about diaper ads. Like, I don't need that. So instead I get targeted ads for, some stupid new camera equipment or something like that I've been looking at. But you know what? At least it's like relevant to me. And like, you have to think about that. That's what comes with the data piece. And to wrap this all up, because there's one other literally new addition that came in the past like 48 hours, 72 hours. I really liked, I believe it was Andrew Yang who proposed this. He proposed a data use tax for companies, for social media companies, that
Interesting.
if I could opt in, right? And let's say I want to opt in and I don't want to pay for the platform, right? But I'm going to say to you, yes, you can use this data. And maybe there's even checkbox. Like you can use this data that every month I would get a check for allowing or for them to use it, because we talked about in our first story, Facebook is a multi-billion-dollar company from which they get multi-billions of ads based on the information of their users, built on the back of the information of their users. So why not essentially give a dividend to users, right? It wouldn't even have to be like hundreds of dollars. But I think at least something to say, all right, I would be willing to give this amount of data to you so that you can sell targeted ads, but essentially give me a dividend. And maybe there's an alternate where it says, I don't want to give you any of my data, right? But then the result is I get freaking diaper ads. Not even adult diapers, kid diapers. Couldn't be less interested in that, you know? So like I think that was I loved that concept. That would not bankrupt Facebook at all, to give a dividend to its users to use their data. It really would.
Well, then you would have the fact, would it go back on Facebook or would it go and be tacked on to the advertiser?
I mean, either way.
Yeah.
I think it's something.
It's a really interesting concept.
It's not simple in execution, but I do think philosophically, it's like a good move and the right move. But there's been a development, as I mentioned, with this. And so there we got Zuckerberg just surfing on in. Definitely not a cyborg. If you were wondering, he's
having a good day.
Definitely not a cyborg. If you were thinking, you may be thinking, I think that Zuckerberg is like a cyborg. No, definitely not. So don't worry about it. He's definitely not a robot hybrid person. He comes in, he just surfs on in, and instead he says, oh, I'm going to steal that. So Facebook, and by extension Instagram, has released and is working on their competitor to TikTok called Reels. And they are reportedly working on luring. I don't know if I used the word luring in any capacity for a teenage social media platform maybe is not the best word, but whatever. TikTok creators,
crazy.
Sure, with 6-figure payments. So bringing over popular TikTok creators to Reels, right? They're essentially in a van and they got the candy. They're trying to get the TikTok people over there. Or bring them over to Reels. Reels is not released yet. But I believe they say it's coming in August.
In America.
Oh, really? It's internationally released.
Yeah. Yes, it has been released in Brazil, India, and somewhere else as of last year.
India was another country that is very much up in arms about this. So that would actually make sense. And oh, they were ready. Yeah.
They banned TikTok and they're like, here you go.
Yeah, they knew, right? And I got to think that
yeah, there was.
Zuck and the current administration have a relationship. And I don't know. This is based on no information here. But you do wonder if there's a connection there between a Facebook competitor, right? Being, making a little noise, stealing away users potentially. Well, to be honest at this point, do we really feel like there's a massive crossover between... There's not a crossover between TikTok and Facebook users, I think. That's not a very big Venn diagram. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, not as much.
With Instagram,
as Instagram.
Probably. It's bigger.
Yeah.
It's not a total eclipse, I think it's bigger, but... And there's one last thing. Oh, never mind. The one last thing I had in here was that TikTok, I blew it. TikTok was also looking at being acquired by a U.S. company. I think that's less likely to happen, though. For them to buy the software
American investor.
bring it all to the
I don't
States?
know. I could see it. So here's the thing with TikTok, and this is what from the research that I was looking into is that the American data for TikTok is held in America. It's hosted in America. All the targeting is done in America. It doesn't like transfer overseas and then come back. So, whether or not that's fully truthful, hard to tell, but that's what TikTok's stance is. That's what their privacy policy says and states as far as how they use data. When it comes to Facebook coming in and launching Reels, the difference in what Reels is going to be is that Reels is going to be a editing feature for Instagram stories. So it's not going to be, as of right now, internationally, they haven't seen it as its own separate entity like IGTV was.
I did see that it was going to live inside of stories. That essentially it's going to
Yeah.
be, and it did. For the description of it was very blasé. Like from what I read, it was like you can create up to 15-second videos with music in the background, and I'm like, yeah, but you could do that now with stories. So it's, I mean, the description was now that is very different than what TikTok can do, but like the description was, and I was like, but that what? Doesn't make sense. I can already do that.
So while it's going to be interesting to see how Reels comes to the US, especially if TikTok does. If TikTok goes away, I think that Facebook would completely go 100% in on making a platform for Reels within Instagram itself and taking it away from Instagram stories. But the way that TikTok is right now, for anyone who isn't fully, comfortable with it, they are much more about swiping. So you just swipe through, and you are constantly getting new pieces of content every time you go through. And they call, it mom TikTok, or they call it, Texas TikTok. There's different themes for every video, and a lot of humor, a lot of creativity. There's a lot of emotional storytelling on it. So it's a really diverse platform for users. Instagram would not, as of today and what we know, they're not going to have that same interface of being able to just swipe through to, kind of stumble into different worlds or different topics or different storylines. So with that being said, I don't think that TikTok is going to be threatened by Instagram Reels as much right now. But the fact that they're going in and paying creators allegedly. I haven't seen any confirmed public sources. Yes. I've only seen anonymous sources.
I would agree.
I'm like, who's so hot?
Yeah.
I always love my fish sense of what's going on here. But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out and if it takes over just like Instagram stories did when they stole that idea from Snapchat.
You bring up a really good example of actual execution of the platforms, like how it being, if this new Reels being buried in stories. Yes, stories are along the top, and you can kind of go through them quickly, but it doesn't have, they would almost have to which is doable, and the fact that kind of anything tech is doable, but like they'd have to almost redefine and restructure the discover feed, like your discover section. Like when you go to search, you get served up things, that. So it's the search tab, but it's also like it's the discover. I feel like they'd almost have to integrate, which is doable, Reels in a big way into that, or they'd have to figure. Because you're right, like TikTok is very much about like rapid moving content, and there's this is where Facebook continuously kind of like steps in a bear trap. It creates bloated platforms because it sees what competitors are doing. It says, hey, that's cool. Or coincidentally, they're developing something exactly like that. They bring it into their system, but they're like duct taping it onto like the side of a car. It's like they have like a car and the spoiler is like 3 feet high because they've duct taped pieces to it. And it has, like an extra, set of headlights on the top. Like they just keep kind of like attaching pieces to it. And eventually it just becomes kind of unwieldy, like Facebook itself, the base platform, became that for a long time. Not that it's that much better now, but at least they broke it apart a lot better because it was starting to get real bloated. Like, I mean, I kind of compare it to like iTunes, right? iTunes became the beast that it set out to destroy with being complete bloatware. You couldn't even, like, it had so many things crammed in it.
Yeah.
And now they've broken it apart. So you have podcasts as a separate thing. You have, I don't even, like, you have music. You have, their Apple Music. All these things are broken apart separately. And I think that's going to be the challenge and interesting thing for what happens with this competitor to TikTok if they're going to have it live inside of Instagram. Is Instagram going to become bloated, and busier? Yeah. It's already there's a lot going on Instagram.
They have IGTV right now, which I don't know. I could see them just dissolving IGTV into Instagram, and into that just being another functionality of posting a video that is longer formatted than the 60 seconds that it traditionally only was. Yeah. So I could see them kind of like morphing that in there, and then having Reels take over the real estate.
Ooh, I see what you did there.
Instagram
Punny.
TV. I could see that happening.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. It's going to be really curious to see how this shakes out.
IGTV right now feels a little bit like the redheaded stepchild of Instagram. I don't know if they know what exactly to do with it because it's not fully incorporated anymore. It used to be in the top right part of the screen, and it's not there anymore. If you post a long form video, it'll say watch more in IGTV and it will pull it up. However, IGTV now also has its own standalone app. So that's what's...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. So it has its own standalone app, but it's still like kind of involved and inside of Instagram. So again, I think it's just the wrestling of... Because here's why they did IGTV. To compete with YouTube. To a younger audience. Yep. To a younger demo that was watching YouTube, watching longer form content. They say, okay, we got to have something on Instagram, which is essentially our youngest skewing product. So we'll do IGTV. But I don't think by any means was it a success story.
Yeah, I think it was a good way for them to expand. I will say, though, no matter what, and this was brought up a lot in the congressional hearing, I think people forget what Instagram was in 2012 and where it is today. And they assume that it was at the caliber closer to what it is today, which is not true. In 2012, it was barely a social media platform, barely. It was more of a photo editing. I remember I was in college. I was putting filters on and thinking I was so cool, and then downloading it and then putting it on Facebook. Yes. So, or Snapchat. I mean, there's a lot there that they have done a phenomenal job after the acquisition of growing it to where it is. I think that they're kind of hitting that benchmark of, are they going to plateau and just kind of stay steady, or are they going to keep innovating? So I think that's where...
And when you say innovating, you mean borrowing from other companies who are doing different things, right? That's the definition of innovation, right? Is that right?
I live with a Facebook. I don't know how much I can...
Oh, geez. Why didn't you tell me? I'm on the blacklist for your house. Oh, my God. So... with that, we come to our conclusion of the show. But before you head out there, before you run away into the rest of your day, this lovely Thursday, if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. Toss us a like on this video. If you liked any aspect, any story, anything that you found either informative, entertaining, or helpful, please toss us a like. I want to also remind everyone before we go, if you missed this in the beginning, you did because my mic wasn't on because I'm a big dum-dum. You missed our sponsor today. We have a sponsor for this show, Gardenio. They are a new kind of garden club. I said so many great things about them when my mic wasn't on. So let me tell you again, they are a monthly subscription. You pay for a season of plants. They're herbs. They send you everything: soil, the plant itself, the seeds, the instructions, the tips, where to put it, how often to water it. they make it dummy proof, which is really great because I'm a dummy when it comes to plants. And it's so easy, even I can do it. And we just did a interview on our podcast, tripodpodcast.com, with the founder and CEO. They're Austin based. So we talked a lot about Austin resources for your startup, some of the organizations and tools and things that he used, and also his search for a co-founder. So a really interesting conversation around that for many of you out there who maybe own your own business and have been thinking about searching or bringing on a co-founder. Really great interview, again, at tripodpodcast.com. But if you go to growgardenio.com and use promo code TRIPOD at checkout, you will save 15% off your order. So please, I encourage you to do that. And of course, I would be remiss. Hold on, I'm going to have to do a lot of skipping. You're going to see our whole show just real quick. If you missed it, you're going to see all our slides here. Give me a second.
Pew, 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 pew.
Here we go. And almost. Okay, boom. I talked about subscribing. Follow us online. Hello Tricycle, all over the place. But of course, you're going to want to connect with Hillary also, right? At Your Social HQ. She's on all the socials at Social HQ. Is there anything else, Hillary, that you'd like to say before we wrap up this first inaugural error-filled episode of Rewind?
Oh, Ross, I'm always flattered to chat with you. Thank you for inviting me back, and so happy to be a part of this with you. For anyone watching on the other side, his setup on the back end is just so special.
I got a lot of stuff going on over here. I feel like the Wizard of Oz.
He's got a lot of stuff going on. You did a fantastic job. But thank you for having me. This was a great chat.
No, I love it. And we will be back next month for Rewind. We'll be talking about all the stories that you may have missed in August. So I encourage you, again, subscribe to this YouTube channel. You'll get notified when we go live and when we post new videos. Otherwise, I'm always posting digital marketing tips and business growth videos here on this channel. So with that, I tell you to go forth into your business, go forth into your day. And as always, I want you to keep pedaling.
Thanks for listening to Tripod. Be sure to subscribe and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. Show notes can be found at tripodpodcast.com. Connect with Tricycle Creative on social media at Hello Tricycle, and learn more about how we can help you with your marketing at tricycle-creative.com.